Stalin was at the zenith of his power. His colleagues felt terror in his presence.
Russian diplomats, like all other Russian officials or party members or whatever, lived in terror of the great man, and justifiably so, because if they gave unpopular advice, they might find themselves in a concentration camp or with a bullet in the back of their heads. It wasn't very easy to give good advice to Stalin. It was unpalatable.
Он сидел такой веселый, настроение у него хорошее, рядом сидел с ним.
Stalin was cheerful and in high spirits. At his side were the main guest, the interpreter, and Soviet guests too.
Вроде и гости, и наши, все так. И когда раздавали официанты там какой-то...
The waiters came in with the main course.
То
I think it was turkey.
То один официант, когда наливал...
One of them, whilst he was pouring the sauce, dropped some red liquid on Stalin's sand-colored jacket.
На этот китель, да? Красный такой жидкость, это самый сок красный, да? И этот он как струйка крови, знаете, так потекла по всему этому красивому, нарядному, торжественному мундиру.
They were in a state of shock about what would happen, because the stains looked like drops of blood.
Замерли в испуге, что будет вообще.
But Stalin didn't react. He continued to talk with his neighbor.
Вот к нему там подскочил какой-то обслуживающий шеф там обслуживающий.
Then another waiter came up to him with some water and offered to sponge it out. But Stalin said, no, no, and he was absolutely calm.
Просидел совершенно спокойно. Все, значит, увидели.
People saw that things seemed to be okay. Everyone began eating again, and the routine continued.
Спокойно до конца и просидел.
To mark the Soviet elections, Stalin made a grand appearance. To his exhausted people, he promised no rewards, but only more effort, more 5-year plans for heavy industry. Then, in cloudy words, he warned that capitalism and imperialism made future wars inevitable. Did this mean war between the Soviet Union and the West? Abroad, alarm bells rang.
I read the speech with care and interpreted it as being a delayed declaration of war against the United States. Wasn't any doubt about it if you read the text carefully, what he was talking about.
The speech was interpreted in the West as no less than a prediction of World War III. I don't think this was right, though.
Но я думаю, что это вряд ли правильно. Во всяком случае,
Stalin didn't say anything new or different in that speech.
Сталин не сказал.
He said what he had always believed, that with imperialism and capitalism, war was inevitable.
С империализмом, с капитализмом неизбежно.
What the Russians were thinking in terms of was that, and I think Stalin thought in these terms, was that communism was one day going to be the dominant ideology in the world, and all countries gradually were going to become communist. And in the meantime, you didn't, in Stalin's idea, start dangerous wars which you might lose, but if you had a good chance of pushing the cause along, you always pushed it along.
Stalin had relaxed his dictatorship during the war, but now he was tightening it once more. The Soviet Union's obvious suspicion of the West disturbed Washington. An American diplomat in Moscow, George Kennan, was asked what he thought was going on.
When they finally sent me a telegram expressing their astonishment and concern because the Russians were dragging their feet about joining the International Bank, I thought, well, for goodness sake, I can't answer that in one question. They're going to have to give me space. And I sat down and tried to give a picture of this government as it emerged from the war.
One of the strengths of Kennan was his awareness that the Russia in which we were living, Stalin's Soviet Russia, communism, people called it, actually drew in very many ways upon the Russian past.
I had to go right back to page 1 and to try to tell them things that I felt they'd forgotten during the war. This all hangs together with this whole question that this was the same group of people who had dealt with Hitler, had tried to deal with Hitler at our expense, and never had changed their views about us.
Kennan's Moscow embassy cable became history, an 8,000-word prophecy that the Soviet Union was in the mood to expand across the world and must be contained.